Clementine cake is having a moment, and rightly so. It is a beautiful cake. It's super tender and it's full of clementine flavor. Let's start with the almonds. I have 2 1/4 cups of sliced blanched almonds, and I'm gonna add them to the rim baking sheet here because I wanna start by toasting them. And doing it first is gonna give them time to cool down before it's time to add them to the rest of the cake. So I'm gonna toast the almonds in a 325-degree oven for 7 minutes. Okay, so now let's get to the star of the show, our clementines. I have 9 ounces of whole clementines, which I've gone ahead and took the stem part off of the fruit. And we're gonna use the whole clementine. But I have to cook them first, because if I don't, a lot of the juice that's in the clementine turns bitter. I'm gonna microwave them, which will help to extract a lot of that bitter juice. I'm just gonna microwave the clementines covered for 3 minutes. The almonds are nice and cool, and I just wanted to show you what they look like. They're a beautiful light tan. We need to make some almond flour. I'm gonna process it in this food processor. I am gonna be using a little bit of all-purpose flour. This is 1 cup. I'm gonna add that right into the food processor. And some baking powder. This is 1 1/4 teaspoons. Again, for the lift. And a little bit of salt, just 1/4 teaspoon. And we're gonna process this until finely ground, which will take about 30 seconds. Okay, we are there. I believe these are nice and finely ground. Let me get a good check here. Yep, they look great. Our homemade almond flour. I'll just transfer this to a bowl because now we're gonna process the clementines. And again, we microwaved those clementines for about 3 minutes, and I went ahead and drained the liquid that was released. So just add them directly into the food processor. We're putting whole clementines in. It's not a mistake. We're gonna process the clementines for about 1 minute. Go in there every once in a while and just use your rubber spatula just to give it a good stir to make sure everything gets incorporated and pureed nicely. Oh my goodness, this is what I'm talking about. The peel, the interior, the whole clementine. This is some liquid sunshine right here. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this just here in the food processor bowl, but now I'm gonna move on down to the stand mixer. It's time to move on to the batter. So we're gonna start with some butter. We have 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter, which has been cut into 10 pieces and softened. Just gonna add that directly into the mixer. And we've got a paddle attachment. And then here we've got 1 1/2 cups of granulated sugar. And I'm gonna beat this until pale and fluffy for about 3 minutes on medium-high speed. Looks pretty pale and fluffy to me. Now it's time to add our eggs. We have a good amount of eggs for this recipe, 5 eggs, which we're gonna add 1 at a time with the mixer running. All right, and now I'm gonna add the clementine puree from earlier. And then I'm just going to mix this until incorporated. And now I'm gonna add our almond mixture in 3 additions with the mixer running on low speed. Might get a little messy, just do the best you can. There's 1. What I like to do is just keep an eye on it, and once I see that it's mixed well enough, then I'll add my 2nd addition. Now you wanna go in there and just scrape down the sides of the bowl every once in a while, just to make sure everything's getting mixed properly. Let that run for just a little bit longer. We are done. There is a little bit of the batter that is still at the bottom. You just want to go and give a couple stirs by hand just to make sure everything gets incorporated. And we are almost ready for the oven. So we are going to bake our clementine cake in a 9-inch springform pan. So I went ahead and greased the pan, and then I lined it with some parchment paper and greased it again. So I will transfer the batter to our prepared pan. Okay, so you want to smooth the top. Time to put the cake in the oven, and it's still heated at 325 degrees. The rack is still in the middle position, and we're going to bake the cake for 55 minutes to about an hour. This looks and smells unbelievable. Let's make sure it's cooked. Just want to make sure that the toothpick comes out clean. Perfect. The cake needs to cool completely, so I'm gonna leave this here for 2 hours. And now we are gonna candy some clementines. First, let's bring some water to a simmer. I have 1 cup of water in this small saucepan, and I'm just gonna add 1 cup of sugar and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. I just wanna stir this together until the sugar is dissolved and let this cook for about 1 minute. While that comes up to a simmer, I'm gonna keep my eye on that. Let's talk about, once again, the clementines. We're gonna put the clementines on top of the cake. So you wanna find clementines at the grocery store that are even in size if possible. You're gonna take 8 ounces right now that are stemmed, and you wanna start by rounding off the edges, because what we're gonna do now is we're gonna slice these clementines into 1/4 inch thick slices. And try if you can to cut them as evenly as possible. And using the tip of a sharp chef's knife, 1/4 inch, we're gonna pick the 8 prettiest slices at the end. All right, we're coming up to a simmer. I'm just gonna use a whisk and go into my saucepan. Just give it a little stir just to make sure the sugar is nice and incorporated. Okay, we're at a simmer here. I'm gonna add the slices into the pan. Everybody in the pool. You're gonna have more than you need, perfectly okay. And just go ahead, give it a stir just to make sure all the slices are nice and submerged. So I'm gonna let the clementine slices cook in here while they're at a nice simmer for 6 minutes. It's been 6 minutes. Our clementine slices look nice and tender. So I am going to transfer them now to this rim baking sheet that I went ahead and lined with a triple layer of paper towels. And this is very important because this is going to help absorb any extra moisture that these slices are going to be hanging on to. I'm going to let these cool for 30 minutes on this sheet, and I'm going to flip them halfway through. Let's make a glaze for our clementine cake. We've got 2 cups of confectioner's sugar, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, and then I have a couple tablespoons of water here, 2.5 tablespoons. I'm gonna whisk this together. You want the consistency to be like thick craft glue. And before you give up, make sure you get all the sugar in there first before you start adding any more water. So I'm gonna add a little bit more water to this, and you only wanna add 1/2 teaspoon at a time because it can get a little thin pretty quickly. So you can always add more, but you can't take away. Perfect, that is exactly the texture I'm looking for. You can drag a trail down the center of the bowl, just like that. That's perfect. I'm gonna leave this here for 1 second, and let's move on down to our clementine cake. It was resting on a wire rack for 2 hours. It's completely cool. I wanna grab my paring knife, and I'm just going to run it between the pan and the cake, just to make sure nothing is stuck. Just gonna release it from the pan. Terrific. Doesn't it look good? So I have a couple offset spatulas. If you don't have an offset spatula, you can use a nice slicing knife if you have one at home. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to help kind of loosen the parchment paper from the bottom of the pan. So this did have the parchment, don't forget. Remember, it was nice and greased, so it's super easy to take off at this point. Even if this was just for my 2 boys, I still would put this cake on a cake stand, because once you see how beautiful this is, here we go. It is glazing time. You can start in the center, and the idea is that the glaze is gonna go in the center, it's gonna run all over the cake, and if it falls down the sides, that is okay. I'm gonna grab the base of the cake stand. I'm gonna use the back of a rubber spatula. You can also use the back of an offset spatula too. And just rotate the cake stand and carefully push the glaze from the center out while you're rotating the cake stand, and carefully push the glaze to the side. Now, depending on the consistency of your glaze, you might see some of the glaze run off immediately, but this one seems to want to kind of hang out on top. I'm okay with that. Okay, well, I am happy with this. I'm gonna let this sit for 1 hour until it is set. The glaze has set, our candied clementine slices are ready to go. So you wanna go ahead and pick 8 of your favorite slices. You're gonna put them north east, south, west. Now place the next 4 slices in between the ones we've already placed. Each slice is going to have one of these slices in it. Well, this is my clementine cake. Okay, I'm going in for a slice. I'm going to go into the center of the cake. All right. Drum roll. Would you look at that? I'm pretty excited about this. Okay, I need to take a bite. Wow. First of all, the height, I mean, this is a cake, you know, it's a substantial cake. Let's see. You know, do you ever just want to hug something? This is absolutely amazing. So much clementine flavor. It is sweet, but it's not too sweet. These candied clementine slices take this cake to a professional level. If you serve this at your house, you're going to be the talk of the town in a good way. Absolutely delicious. It certainly doesn't get any tastier or more beautiful than this. The keys to making a perfect clementine cake are to start by microwaving whole clementines, add a little all-purpose flour to some toasted blanched almonds, and finally, candy your own clementines. From Cook's Country, the world's best clementine cake. So good.
Thanks for watching Cook's Country from America's Test Kitchen. So what'd you think?
Leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or just say hi.
Now you can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
Alligator.